Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of Hindu News Analysis. This is Shyam Sir here, taking up the analysis dated 16th December 2025. Now, before I start the session, whether I am audible and visible to all of you, please do let me know. Am I audible and visible for all of you? Please do let me know. Done. Thanks a lot. So let's start the session. In today's session, I'll be covering total of 8 articles. All of them are from the Hindu newspaper daily edition except one. The first article, the quality control order, in order to widen the horizon and in order to ensure that you will have concepts, the terms that will be covered from other newspapers as well. I've covered this article from today's Business Line newspaper. So total 8 articles. Discussion will be comprehensive. If you're liking the session, hit the like button. If you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly join right now. Before I start with the first article, here is a very important announcement. I've been told that this particular offer, which has been introduced by Unacademy for the first time ever, where we are providing 3 offers in one bundle, that is 50% discount on any courses that you purchase, the dual validity, wherein if you purchase for 6 months, we are offering additional 6 months free of cost, and the third one, Unacademy Assure, wherein if you are our subscriber and if you do not clear the exam, the next attempt will be on us. This bundle, which is being offered for the first time ever by the Unacademy, the last date to avail the offer is tomorrow. That is 17th December 2025. Those who are interested to enroll into our courses, check out the details by clicking on the link provided in the description below. Now let's start with the first article. Again, I'm telling you, this one I've taken from the Business Line. Right? The first article, rollback of quality control orders, calls for guardrails. Now, what are the important points? Let's start. The Government of India introduced BIS Act. BIS stands for Bureau of Indian Standards. The BIS Act was introduced back in the year 2016, and under the BIS Act, multiple ministries started announcing quality control orders. Now, what is the basic idea of a quality control order? Let's say any import is supposed to come into India. Now, this particular import will have to get a certificate. Will have to get a certificate. Certificate from whom? From the BIS. Now, once the certification is provided, it basically means the imports of this will be allowed, and this idea of a certification was introduced in order to ensure that the imports which are done into India, the imports which will come into India are quality imports. Right? There are no health related issues associated with imports. So the basic idea of introducing the concept of quality control order was to ensure quality imports will come into India. And to begin with, the QCOs, I'll repeat the statement, QCO stands for Quality Control Order. The quality control orders initially were very few in number, hardly around 14 to 15. And the QCOs were announced to cover the final goods. They were announced to cover the final goods. That is essentially were announced targeting the final goods imports. For example, let's say a toy is imported into India. Whether this particular toy has any harmful chemicals, right? The plastic, whether it has any kind of a harmful substance, etc. Right? That will be tested and certificate will be issued, and then the imports will be allowed. But listen to me now. The QCO, which was initially targeted at the final goods, over a period of time, that is especially in the last 1 decade, was expanded to cover even the intermediary goods, was announced for intermediary goods as well as the raw materials. So rather than only targeting the final goods, we started imposing or announcing QCOs for intermediary as well as raw materials. Now, what was the result as a announcement? The result was there was a lot of delay that was caused because of the QCOs, because now the approvals will take time. So there were lot of delays. In addition to delays, there was also an additional cost that was incurred for importing the raw materials or intermediary goods, etc. Because you'll have to get a certificate. To get a certificate, you'll have to file certain documents. You'll have to pay certain charges. In addition to this, it was also seen that the ministries on one side were announcing one after the other QCO. By the end of 2024, there were more than 700 QCOs announced in India. So, one after the other, multiple ministries have announced QCOs. But the infrastructure that is required, infrastructure in the sense the testing labs, the authorities that are required, the specialists that are required to issue certificates, etc. The infrastructure that was required to issue the QCOs, there was a lack of it. We did not have sufficient numbers of authorities, experts to release or issue the QCOs. And as a result of this, the MSME sector, all the industries which were importing were affected, but specifically the MSME, micro, small, medium enterprises, the MSMEs were hit very hard. And not to forget, when the cost of imports will increase, automatically the cost of production will also increase. Correct? Does it make sense to all of you? When the cost of input increases, the cost of production also increases. And imagine, I'm supposed to import a raw material, manufacture a product, and export the product to the international market. Now, because of the higher cost of the production, my export competitiveness will reduce. My export competitiveness will go down. And not just this, India is negotiating free trade agreements. India is negotiating free trade agreements with multiple countries. In the West Asia, we are negotiating free trade agreements. With USA, we are negotiating a free trade agreement. With European Union, we are negotiating a free trade agreement. So we are negotiating free trade agreements. One of the important concerns that has been raised by many of the trading partners is the issue of quality control orders. That is, they argue that under the free trade agreement, we will negotiate and we will reduce the tariff barriers. Correct? Generally, under the free trade agreements, the tariff barriers are covered and the tariff barriers are either reduced or eliminated. But if you reduce the tariff barriers and if you have a high amount of QCOs, which are a class of non-tariff barriers, which are a type of non-tariff barriers, this is going to hurt the exports coming from the trading partners. So there was a concern raised by multiple countries which are negotiating FTA with India, and not to forget even the Chinese officials. Now a lot of you will be interested in this. Even the Chinese officials, when Indian officials met with them, wanted to negotiate, wanted the Chinese authorities to withdraw the different types of regulations that they've imposed on various exports which are coming into India. The Chinese officials basically pointed out that government of India has announced a lot of quality control orders and many of the Chinese companies have not been issued with the certificates. So these are some of the concerns or issues associated with the QCOs which have been announced. Now, the government of India, in order to address this particular issue, set up a panel. Rajiv Gauba panel. Rajiv Gauba panel. Now, the Rajiv Gauba panel has given recommendations. It has recommended that a lot of these QCOs doesn't have any kind of a economic argument or economic rationality. They have pointed out to more than 200 QCOs, and the committee or the panel has recommended that the government of India should either withdraw these particular QCOs or put a pause on the QCOs. Withdraw or put a pause. Now, many of the ministries have started announcing withdrawal. I repeat, many of the ministries, based on the recommendation provided by the panel, have started announcing withdrawal of these particular QCOs. This is basically the story that has happened in recent times. Now, what is the concern associated with the withdrawal? On one side, we should be happy because withdrawal of QCOs means many of the concerns that I've spoken about so far, a lot of these concerns automatically will get addressed. But the new concern will arise because of the withdrawal of the QCOs. The new concern is that once the government ministries will start withdrawing, removing these particular QCOs or pausing these QCOs, now many of the imports which are substandard in nature, many of the imports which are not qualitative in nature might start to flow into India. Is it okay? This is a very important concern. A substandard import might start flowing into India. And considering the fact that a lot of these manufacturers keep on looking out for cheaper inputs, cheaper raw materials, etc., they might end up purchasing these particular substandard inputs or the raw materials, use it for the production, which will hamper the quality of the product. And that was initially the concern why the QCOs were imposed. This is the first very important concern. Second very important concern, one of the reasons why we were able to control in the sense, the imports from China were not to the extent that would have happened if there are no QCOs. If there were no QCOs, imports from China could have been much, much higher. In fact, government of India was able to increase the production of toys in India, increase the exports of toys in India, which led to India becoming for the first time a net exporter of toys. Was one of the policy used was the QCO. Because before that, the Indian market used to import a lot of toys from the Chinese market. The government of India imposed QCO. The imports were controlled. Production was promoted in India. This actually led to India becoming a net exporter of toys. So the concern here is if the government of India will withdraw these particular QCOs, Chinese imports into India might suddenly start to increase. And as such, already the concern with the Chinese market in the context of India is that we have a huge amount of a trade deficit. We have huge amount of trade deficit. How much? Around $100 billion. It is just over $99 billion. I'm rounding off the number, around $100 billion. So the imports might suddenly start to increase. And finally, not to forget, if the QCOs on the products are withdrawn suddenly like this by the government authorities, this might even hurt the production activities in the domestic market. This might even hurt the production activities. Rather than producing an input and supplying it in Indian market, now the manufacturer will simply import the input from other economy. Rather than producing the final good because there's a QCO on the final good, now the final good will be imported easily into India. This might even hurt the production activities in the domestic market. So the writer here, the author simply states that on one side, there is a need to reduce the QCOs. Yes. But when the government suddenly withdraws these particular QCOs so abruptly and so fast, rather than promoting the positive impact on the economy, there might be overall, I repeat, overall, a negative impact on the Indian economy. And these are some of the concerns which have been raised by the writer in the article. Everybody is okay with the discussion? Now, based on this, please take up an assignment question. The question reads, critically evaluate the policy of implementing quality control orders in India. How can India balance quality assurance with ease of doing business? So there is a dilemma. If I implement QCOs, it is going to have certain negative impacts. And if I withdraw the QCOs suddenly, right, it is also going to have certain negative impact. Right? So how do I balance the ease of doing business as well as the quality assurances? The question is asking you to elaborate the statement. Right? So please try out the answer. Now, here is a MCQ. I want all of you to solve the MCQ and tell me the answer very quickly. Tell me the answer very quickly. Consider the following statements. The QCOs are type of tariff barriers. The QCOs are announced under the Customs Tariff Act. India has announced QCOs only on the finished goods. How many of the statements are correct? Let me know the answer. QCOs are a type of tariff barriers. Megha says option A. Okay, so QCOs are type of tariff barriers? No, this is a non-tariff barrier. Please remember, non-tariff barrier. Okay, the QCOs are announced under the Customs Tariff Act. No, this is incorrect. The statement I've given for a simple reason. Very recently, I don't know how many of you have observed that article. The finance minister in a recent summit has stated that the next set of reforms, I repeat, the next set of major reforms will be announced in rationalizing the customs duties. That was a very important statement, by the way. But are the QCOs announced under the Customs Tariff Act? No, incorrect. India has announced QCOs only on the finished goods? No, this is also incorrect. It has not announced QCOs only on the finished goods, only being the key term here. It has announced on raw material, right, various intermediate goods, etc. All the three statements are incorrect. Right option will be option D, none of the above. Now, before I go forward to the next article for discussion, today, starting 6 p.m., I'll be taking up a marathon session to cover all the concepts from the chapter banking. All the concepts from the chapter banking, from the most basic to the most advanced. This is a very important chapter because if you have seen, around 3 questions in every year's UPSC prelims examination are asked from this particular chapter. Do not miss out. Join the session live. Any doubts, any concerns, any issues, I'll address your doubts in the live session. Do not miss out. In addition to that, those who are interested in learning international relations, specifically India-Pakistan relations, Chetan Sir is taking a platinum session today. It's a free session. Those who are interested, register for the session using the link provided in the description. Let me start. Next article, does India need to upgrade its biosecurity measures? Does India need, right, to upgrade its biosecurity measures? In recent times, very important 3 events have taken place. Remember all the 3. First one, there was a terrorist attack which was planned but foiled by the authorities in India, security authorities in India, where ricin, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of this now, ricin was supposed to be used to poison various eateries in the national capital. That's a first very important worrisome event or worrisome news. Second one, the COVID. I'm pretty sure all of you remember what happened during the COVID. Right? Was COVID basically, was it planned? Was it because of the Chinese authorities? Right? Or was it, right, let's say, terrorism attack, etc. There have been various speculations, although there is no proof to prove that. So that is also one event. Third one, right? In the recent times, the biological weapons convention has completed 50 years. The biological weapons convention has completed 50 years. And very recently, that is in the month of December itself, its meet was held in India. Its meet was held, the BWC meet, the meet to celebrate or commemorate the 50 years of the BWC was held in India itself. So please remember this, anything that completes 50 years, 10 years, 5 years or even 100 years automatically becomes important for the UPSC examination. I'll give you one more important point. Please remember this can be asked in the UPSC examination. That is 2025 also marks 50 years of RRBs. Correct? All of you know this? The 2025 year also marks 50 years of regional rural banks in India. RRBs. So please be very careful. Questions can be asked on RRB. And if you're interested, I'm going to cover RRBs in detail in today's session. Do join it. Now, I've got a question to all of you. I want your answer. Either give it in the chat section live or post it in the comment section after you watch the recordings. Which is the committee which recommended establishing RRBs in India? Which committee recommended, which panel recommended the establishment of RRBs in India? What is the answer? Do let me know. Now come back to the question here or come back to the article. What is being discussed? In recent times, there are a lot of concerns associated with biosecurity. What is this idea for biosecurity? Please have a look at the important points here. Don't worry, somebody will say, sir, one of the word is missing, it is overlapping with the arrow mark, etc. Don't worry. I will tell you what is the word which is not visible to you. And if you're interested, download the PPT. Later, you will be able to see the complete picture. Now, what is the idea for biosecurity? Biosecurity refers to set of practices and systems which are designed in such a way that any kind of intentional misuse of biological agents will not be allowed. Any kind of misuse of the biological agents. For example, if you're storing any biological weapon, if you're conducting a research on a biological weapon, right, if you're developing certain biological weapons, essentially this kind of a development, storage, distribution, etc. will not be allowed. That is essentially the concept of biosecurity. And with the Biological Weapons Convention, BWC, the Biological Weapons Convention, which was open to signing in 1972, India ratified this in 1974 and finally came into force, came into effect from 1975. This is essentially promoting the idea of a biosecurity. Please remember, biosecurity, right? It promotes biosecurity. But lot of times, the article simply says there is a confusion amongst the countries regarding biosecurity and biosafety. And even people presume that the biosafety is equal to biosecurity. Argument is no. Biosafety basically deals with certain standards or sets or measures which will ensure accidental leakage. Accidental leakage. It is to protect, it is to basically promote safety. Whereas biosecurity is a bigger term. Biosecurity also ensures that you will not be developing the weapons, you will not be storing any kind of an agent which can be used to develop weapons, etc. So there is a need to promote biosecurity. In fact, in the meet that was held in India in the month of December, there was a discussion in order to promote the idea of a biosecurity. That is basically the argument of various speakers was that there is so much of technological advancement today. I repeat, there is so much of development of technological advancement today that even non-state actors, forget about state actors, that is governments developing biological weapons, that is always a concern. But in addition to the state developing these particular bioweapons, now the non-state actors are able to use the technology, develop or try to develop the bioweapons. In fact, the summit leaders basically stated that there is a need to implement policies, measures in order to promote biosafety and biosecurity in order to prevent those kind of, misuse of the technology by the non-state actors. Now come to the point. What is the status of biosecurity in India? I know a lot of you will be thinking, sir, why have you listed so many points in the slide? I'll tell you the reason, don't worry. And don't worry, you don't have to remember all the points. If you can remember some of them, it will help you to write a mains answer. So what is the status of biosecurity in India? The problem in case of India is that we have multiple laws, multiple, guidelines are there in order to promote biosafety as well as biosecurity. But the problem is that we have too much of a fragmented approach. I repeat, we have too much of a fragmented approach. What do you mean by fragmented approach here? You take examples of other countries. For example, in case of United Kingdom or for that matter European Union. In case of European Union, we have Biosecurity Forum. In case of the United Kingdom, we have UK Biosecurity Council. And you can keep on discussing in the context of Japan, in the context of USA, in context of NATO, in Australia as well. So what they have done is they have understood the problem associated with biosecurity, and they, rather than having a fragmented approach, they have a centralized approach. Centralized in the sense there is one authority which is responsible for all the coordination, cooperation amongst different units or different parts of the governance. In case of India, please have a look at these particular points now. Please have a look at these particular points. You will realize that there are too many provisions, there are too many laws, too many guidelines. We have a fragmented approach rather than having one authority which is responsible for taking care of all of this. There is no single authority, there is no one entity which will coordinate with all the other authorities which are involved in ensuring biosafety and biosecurity in India. We have Department of Biotechnology, which will formulate broad guidelines associated with safety framework associated or applicable for labs. We have National Center for Diseases Control, which manages the surveillance as well as the outbreak associated with, right, let's say these kind of pathogens. The Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying is also involved in monitoring some issues. There is also one more law. There is a different set of guidelines like this. We even have National Disaster Management Authority, right? So argument of the writer is simple. We have fragmented framework. Let's move towards having one authority, a centralized authority, which will promote coordination and cooperation amongst all these different, let's say, different departments or the authorities. Right, so that is essentially the gist of the article provided here. Now, associated with this, please take up a practice question for mains answer writing. The advancement in the scientific progress without adequate governance can become a security liability. Discuss in the context of biosecurity. Right, this is a 15-marker question for 250 words. Please try out. I've given you 2 questions today for practicing mains answer writing. Please do not miss out. As usual, take up the MCQ, solve the MCQ and tell me the answer very quickly. Consider the following statements regarding Biological Weapons Convention. It came into force from 1975. India ratified it even before it entered into force. Under this, there are provisions for verifications through inspections. I know a lot of you will be able to answer the first statement and second statement. You will either be very confident regarding the third statement or very confused regarding the third statement. As expected, most of you are saying option C is the right one. Okay. It came into force from 1975. Yes. It opened for signing, like I said, 1972. India ratified in 1974. It came into force from 1975. India ratified it even before it entered into force. Yes. Third one is tricky. Under this, there are provisions for verifications through inspections. Inspections, that's a key term here. This is incorrect. Why? Listen to me very carefully. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of, right, NBT, correct? NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of Chemical Weapons Convention. Now, what is common in both of these? The common factor in both of this is there is a provision of inspection. What do you mean by inspection? In the context of Non-Proliferation Treaty, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, is given the power to go to the member countries and hold inspections rather than self-declarations. They will go to the member countries, the signatories, and inspect and then basically certify. In case of Chemical Weapons Convention, yes, there is an element of inspection. But in case of the BWC, in the context of BWC, this is not there. Please remember this. In case of BWC, it is not there. In fact, it was one of the proposals. Back in the year 2001, there was a proposal to promote a verification or to implement a verification protocol. USA opposed it. As a result of this, we do not have a verification protocol under the BWC like we have under the NPT, under the CWC. So third statement is incorrect. Right option for the question will be option B. Only 2 are correct. Okay. Everybody is okay with the discussion so far? Please do let me know. Some of you know the answer, some of you are making a mistake. Please update the information. Okay, like I said yesterday we had a part of the discussion associated with this. The Prime Minister of India is on a three-nation tour. Three-nation tour. 15-16, 16-17, 17-18. The first leg of the tour is PM visiting Jordan. PM visiting Jordan. And I've given a map here. Please observe the map. Please observe the map. The three countries that the Prime Minister will be visiting will be one, Jordan, and look at where Jordan is geographically located. That's the reason it becomes so important. The West Asian countries for India anyways is important. For example, we have very close ties with Saudi Arabia. We have signed a free trade agreement with United Arab Emirates, etc. So the first leg will be Jordan. After Jordan, right, the second leg will be Ethiopia. I hope all of you remember yesterday I've shown you that particular map as well. And the third leg of the trip will be Oman. Right, Oman, however you want to pronounce it. And thereafter back to India. So these are the three countries the Prime Minister will be visiting in the next few days. Now, what are the important points? The Prime Minister has arrived in Oman now, or has arrived in Oman. Now certain talks are happening. In the context of India and Oman, what are the important points? What are the important points? Now, whenever you read about these kind of, let's say, trips, try to read it under headings, broad headings. What kind of broad headings? Is there Indian diaspora present? Which means automatically this country becomes important for India. It becomes important for India, diaspora of India. Yes, it is present in Jordan. And second, what are the security and defense relations? Security and defense relations with this country. And the third, as usual, my area of expertise, that is economic and trade. Economic, trade or investment relations. Economic, trade and investment relations. Now, in the context of PM visiting Jordan, what should you remember under all the three heads? Is there Indian diaspora present in Jordan? Yes. Yes. Around 17,000 people, around 17 or more than 17,000 people, Indians, right, are present. Indian diaspora is present in Jordan. What about the security or defense relationship between India and Jordan? This visit marks or is essentially to mark 75th year of diplomatic relations between India and Jordan. Diplomatic relations between India and Jordan. Right. Second, because Jordan is present in this region, that is, right, basically connected to the hotspot of the Western Asian group of countries, that is Israel and Palestine. Jordan has been supporting the two-state outcome or two-nation outcome, right? That is basically Israel and Palestine. Does India support it? Yes, India also has been supporting the two-state outcome, right? So that is the second very important point. Third very important point, in the context of trade, in the context of investment, etc. India is one of the largest trading partner. India is one of the largest trading partner. That is, according to the latest data, the overall trade, right? Based on that, India is the fourth largest trading partner. Fifth very important point, there is an angle of food security as well. There is an angle of food security, right? What is this food security angle? India imports lot of fertilizers. Correct? All of you know this. India imports lot of fertilizers. And some of these particular fertilizers are imported from Jordan as well. Right? That is the food security angle. And the fifth very important point, IMEC, Indian Middle East Corridor. IMEC, India Middle East Corridor. IMEC, basically proposed IMEC runs through Jordan. And the seventh very important point, which you can add it under the security aspect, the country Jordan always has supported India's stand on Kashmir. This country has always supported India's stance on Kashmir. So these are 7 very important aspects or 7 very important points that you need to understand from the context of the Prime Minister Modi visiting, right, this particular country. Done? Now beyond this, don't go into the stories, don't do a PhD on all of this. Okay, right, let me go forward. Another, right, place where Prime Minister will be visiting. The Prime Minister visit to Oman. I told you, first will be Jordan, first leg will be Jordan, then Ethiopia, and the third leg will be Oman. Now, what are the important points in the context of India's PM's visit to Oman? Same, the trade and investment, angle, and, right, as usual, the security defense angle. The security and defense angle. First and foremost, this year will be marking 70th year of relationship between India and Oman. 70 years. Now, in addition to that, the country Oman very recently has agreed to transfer the Jaguar fighter planes to India. How many? There are around 20 Jaguar fighter planes which are there with Oman. Oman is one of the very few countries around the world which even today have Jaguar along with another country, that is India. Now, what is the importance of the transfer or the decision of, right, Oman to transfer the Jaguar planes to India? India has welcomed this particular decision of the country, but more importantly, understand this. India has around 87 Jaguar planes right now, Jaguar fighter planes. These particular planes, the manufacturing of this has been stopped. The manufacturing of these spare parts, etc., has been stopped. This was actually a joint venture. It was a joint venture between France and UK. The Jaguar planes were manufactured by France and UK. Now the production of this has been stopped, which means India, in order to maintain the fleet of the Jaguar fighter planes, requires spare parts, requires components, etc. But the manufacturing has been stopped. On the other hand, Oman has stopped using, right, these Jaguar planes. It has retired these particular planes from the duty. So the country or the government there has decided to transfer these particular planes to India. This is very important. Please make a note of this. Second very important point in the context of security or defense. Back in the year 2008, the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Manmohan Singh, visited Oman. Visited Muscat, to be very precise. And in that year, there was a strategic relationship agreement which was signed between both the countries. There was an agreement that was signed between both the countries. One of the very important provisions of this particular agreement, one of the outcomes of this kind of an agreement, is the defense relationship between both the countries. Even today, when you look at this particular region, right, that is a West Asian region, there is a lot of, right, issues associated with pirate attacks. And in this particular region, right, Indian ships are allowed to be present, right, because the government of Oman has allowed it. It has allowed the presence of Indian, right, let's say, the security ships. And not to forget, this is the country or this region, this is the country where Indian forces, all the 3 forces, conduct annual exercise. All the 3 forces, that is Navy, Air Force and Army, conduct exercise with Oman forces. This is second very important relationship in the context of security and defense. Now come to trade and investment. What are the important points in the context of trade and investment? The total bilateral trade between India and Oman has crossed more than $10 billion. Important, not very large, but it is increasing. That's important. Not to forget, the total amount of investment by the Indian companies in the market, in the Oman, or the exports from Oman have increased. And have a look at this, the total FDI from Oman into India also has increased. But more importantly, please make a note of this. Please make a note of this. One of the outcomes of the 2008, the security arrangement, or let's say the strategic agreement that was signed, was OIJIF. OIJIF. That is Oman India Joint Investment Fund. It's a 50-50 joint venture, 50% owned by the government of India and 50% by Oman. It's a 50-50 joint venture between, not the government, make a correction, the State Bank of India as well as Oman Investment Authority. Huge amount of investment have taken place from this particular JV right into the Indian projects. Lot of investment has happened from this particular JV into the India's infrastructure projects. Right, so these are certain important points. Add one more point here. The cabinet very recently, before the trip, right, the cabinet very recently has approved the trade agreement with Oman. It has approved the trade agreement with Oman. In fact, it will be called as CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. In this region, this will be India's second SEPA. I repeat, in this region, this will be India's second SEPA. SEPA means Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. The first SEPA from India or with India in this region has been done by UAE. Right? So remember, all these particular points can be asked in the prelims examination. So these are important points associated with the Prime Minister's 3-nation tour. Right? One with Ethiopia that we discussed yesterday, today with Oman and with Jordan. Now, please solve the MCQ. OMIFCO is a joint venture project between India and Oman for fertilizer production. Let me know how many of you will give me the right answer. Do let me know. Uralchem is forming a joint venture project with Indian companies to set up fertilizer production unit. And the third one, India imports complete requirement of muriate of potash fertilizer. How many of these 3 statements are true? What is the answer? Let's start. OMIFCO is a joint venture project between India and Oman for fertilizer production. This was there very recently in the newspaper. It was there very recently in the newspaper in the context of what? When Mr. Putin visited India. Mr. Putin very recently visited India. During the visit, there was a joint venture or a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding between Uralchem, that is a Russian company, with 3 Indian companies, 3 Indian PSUs, under which a huge value or huge volume of fertilizer plant would be constructed, would be developed in Russia. That is essentially the second statement. So in that particular context, even the first statement was discussed. OMIFCO is a joint venture project between India and Oman for fertilizer production. Yes. Yes, this is true. Right? That is basically, we have Oman Oil Company, OIC. OIC is Oman Oil Company. And on the other side, we have IFCO. We have IFCO and CRIBCO. Remember all these particular points. OIC will have 50% ownership of this JV and remaining 50% will be equally distributed between IFCO as well as CRIBCO. Right? So first statement is true. Uralchem is forming a joint venture project with Indian companies to set up fertilizer production unit. Yes, that is also true. India imports complete requirement of muriate of potash. Is it true? Yes. India imports the complete requirement of muriate of potash. We do not have the raw materials that is required to produce this in India. Hence, we end up importing it. All the 3 statements are correct. Right option will be option C. Everybody is okay? Do let me know. A lot of you did not answer to this particular question. Why? Why? What is the issue? You should have answered because all the 3 statements are from current affairs only. Let's go forward. Raj Kumar Goyal takes oath as a CIC, 8 more sworn in. Right, or sworn in. What is the importance of this article? We have, a statutory body. We have a statutory body by the name Central Information Commission, CIC. Right, this is a statutory body because it is set up under Right to Information Act, RTI, Right to Information Act. Now, this particular CIC, according to the provisions of the Act, is supposed to have one Chief Information Commissioner, along with not more than 10 information commissioners. I'll repeat the statement. Please make a note of this. Why, you will understand in a minute. It is supposed to have one chief information commissioner and not more than 10 information commissioners. Right now, until the swearing in happened yesterday, how many information commissioners were there? There were only 2 information commissioners. Only 2 information commissioners. Right? The previous chief information commissioner retired, superannuation, and after that there were only 2 information commissioners. So for the first time in the last 9 years, I repeat, for the first time in the last 9 years, we have the full representation in the Chief Information Commission. Full representation, that is what is allowed under the law, we have the full representation. That is 1 CIC plus 2 are existing plus 8 more. Right? Are you able to read the headline now? Right? There are 8 more information commissioners who were sworn in, which means 1 CIC plus 10 IC, which is maximum allowed under the law. We will have it for the first time in the last 9 years. This is the first very important point. Please remember this. Second important point, whenever the appointment of the information commissioners will happen, what is the process? Right? Remember that as well. What is the process? The process is simple. A panel which will have a prime minister, the leader of opposition, right, as well as home minister gave the recommendation. Simple. Gave the recommendation, and the president of India will basically, right, administer the oath. But what is important in this particular panel? Remember this. Although I've written the prime minister, LOP plus home minister, the law simply provides for the default composition of a prime minister plus LOP. The representation of home minister is not by default. It is not by default, means it is not given under the law. The prime minister will have to appoint or basically approve appointment of one union minister. The prime minister will have to appoint a union minister as a part of the 3-member group. So the prime minister by default will be present. The leader of opposition, right, will be by default present. And the third person, the union minister, will have to be nominated or appointed by the prime minister. Please remember, this can be tested in the prelims examination in the form of a statement. So these are the 3 very important points. 3 important points. Statutory body, composition. For the first time ever, we have the full, right, let's say, the full membership in the Chief Information Commission. And finally, the authority which will give recommendation for the appointment. And swearing in is done, or the oath is administered by the President of India. These are the important points. Now, solve the MCQ. This should not be difficult. This should not be difficult. Consider the following statements. The Central Information Commission is a constitutional body. As per the law, there can be not more than 13 information commissioners. The CIC's oath will be administered by the Chief Justice of India. Please do not make a mistake here as well. All the 3 statements are incorrect. All the 3 statements are incorrect. All of you have given the right answer. Please pat yourself. Be happy. Right? So, right option for the question will be option D, none of the above. Okay. Now, what is surprising is this question everybody answered so quickly. Previous question I was asking, please tell me the answer. Please tell me the answer. And all of you are like, not my responsibility. Let others type in. And nobody typed the answer because of that. Okay. Next article. The Union government has proposed SHANTI Bill. Union government has proposed SHANTI Bill to allow private sector to run clear nuclear power plants. What are the important points? First and foremost, SHANTI stands for Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy for Transforming India. Lengthy, right? Right? Lengthy statement or lengthy name, agreed. Right? So this is the full form of SHANTI Bill. What is the importance? Listen to me carefully. Since independence, multiple industrial policies have been announced by the government. Multiple industrial policies. For example, if you take the most important industrial policy before 1991, the industrial policy of 1956. In the industrial policy of 1956, the industries were classified into three schedules, Schedule A, B, and C. The nuclear power was kept under Schedule A. Then there was the industrial policy of 1991. Most of you will know it by the name of LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Even after implementing so many reforms in other industries, nuclear energy has been tightly controlled under the complete control of the union government. The government has set up multiple authorities. For example, Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. The whole supply chain was essentially controlled by the union government. The private sector was very tightly regulated in terms of participation in the nuclear energy or atomic energy. But over a period of time, the government of India has realized that there is a need to allow private sector participation, right? Because you require huge amount of R&D. You require, investment. You require expertise, technology from the private sector. And on the other hand, the government of India also has targeted having 100 gigawatts of nuclear energy production capacity by 2047. Right now, we have around 8.8 gigawatts. The target is 100 gigawatts by 2047. So in order to achieve all of this, Government of India now has announced SHANTI Bill. What are the important provisions of the SHANTI Bill? First one, henceforth or going forward, the government will allow private sector participation in setting up, operating and decommissioning of nuclear power plants. Right now, we have 23 nuclear plants which are operating in India. But with the passage of the bill becoming an act, then coming into force, government will allow private sector to set up, operate the nuclear power plants, even decommission the nuclear power plants. But with the caveat. What's a caveat? Whenever you talk about nuclear power plants, there is requirement of heavy water. Correct? You require heavy water. In addition to heavy water, you require enrichment of nuclear fuel. You need to take care of the spent fuel as well. So the government simply says, I will allow the private sector to open nuclear power plants, operate nuclear power plants, but the heavy water production, enrichment of the nuclear fuel, as well as managing the spent fuel will continue to remain under the control of the union government. Will continue to remain under the control of the government. That's a very important point. Please remember. Right? In addition to this, the liability clause, very important liability clause. Whenever you talk about nuclear energy in India or nuclear power plants, there is always one provision that inadvertently or automatically will come into discussion. That is liability. Until now, according to the provisions of the CLND, CLND, that is a civil liability or Civil Nuclear Liability Act 2010, there was one concern. The provisions basically had the section 17B. Section 17B. What did the section 17B essentially say? It stated that in case of any kind of a, let's say nuclear damages or in case of any kind of nuclear accidents, even the supplier can be held liable. I'll repeat, even the supplier can be held liable. But now the government of India under this particular bill states that the earlier, the Atomic Energy Act as well as CLND, both of them will be repealed, and under the new proposal, the supplier will not be held liable automatically. It is basically the decision of the operator. It will be the operator. Operator is liable. Operator is liable in case of nuclear damage. This is a big relief for private sector companies, especially foreign private sector companies, which initially showed interest in India, but looking at the liability clause, moved away from India. That's a second very important provision. Third very important provision, it also has provisions which allows import and export of nuclear fuel technology, etc. Fourth very important provision, FDI up to 49% would be allowed. FDI up to 49%, and that too through approval route. I repeat, that too through approval route, not automatic, up to 49% through approval route. And the fifth very important provision is a nuclear tribunal. A nuclear tribunal would be set up to handle the disputes. A nuclear tribunal would be set up to handle disputes. So these are the five most important, I repeat, five most important provisions under the proposal. Now let's wait and see. Once it is introduced, the discussion will happen. It could be sent to a committee like it has been done in the context of the higher education bill. Let's wait and see what will happen regarding this particular bill. Okay. Now, please solve the MCQ very quickly. Solve the MCQ very quickly. Consider the following statements. The heavy water helps in increasing the speed of neutrons in the nuclear reactor. SNT question or statement. The atomic energy was part of Schedule A in the Industrial Policy of 1956. FDI up to 100% is allowed under nuclear energy. How many of the statements are correct? Okay, some of you are saying option B, right? Some have started saying option A. Heavy water helps in increasing the speed of neutrons in the nuclear reactor. Does it help in increasing the speed or reducing the speed? It helps in reducing the speed. The atomic energy was part of the Schedule A in the Industrial Policy of 1956. Yes, Schedule A, right? The atomic energy was part of Schedule A. Even in the Industrial Policy of 1948, it was part of Category 1. FDI up to 100% is allowed under the nuclear energy? No, this is incorrect. Incorrect. Right? FDI was not allowed until recently. It was a prohibited area. Now, under the proposal, up to 49%, that too through approval route is allowed. So, right option for the question will be option A. Only one is correct. Now, next article, MGNREGA to be replaced. MGNREGA to be replaced. In the earlier session, I told you the government of India is considering renaming MGNREGA. But now the government of India has announced, no, we are not going to just change the name. We are going to replace MGNREGA altogether. Right? We are going to implement one more, right? Let's say the scheme, the name of the scheme is Visit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission Gramin. Right? In short, it will be written as Visit Bharat VBG RAMG. Right? Please remember this. VB, right? G RAMG. A bill has been proposed now by the Union government. What will the Union government do, or what are the proposals under the bill? They want to replace MGNREGA. Straightforward. First one. Second one, under MGNREGA, we had 100 days of employment opportunity, unskilled wage opportunities, 100 days. Now, under the new bill, they want to increase it to 125 days. They want to increase it to 125. Second, right now under MGNREGA, what is the way expenditure is incurred? In terms of wages, I repeat, in terms of wages, 100% of the wage expenditure, 100% of the wage expenditure is incurred by the Union government. In case of materials, 75% would be incurred by the government, 25% by the states, which essentially translated into overall 90% of the expenditure to be incurred by the center and 10% to be incurred by the state. Now, under the new bill, the government of India has planned a change. Right? Rather than having this kind of an expenditure pattern, the government in the proposal says 60% of the expenditure will be incurred by the center, 40% would be incurred by the states. 60% by the center, 40% by the states. Important point, please remember why. All of this will become point of contention now. All of these will become point of contention. Lot of discussion will happen now regarding this particular bill. And not just this. One of the very important changes that they have proposed is, look at the headline here. Please look at the headline. Set to turn supply driven. The new bill will change the system from demand driven to supply driven. Meaning what? Until now, under MGNREGA, the jobs would be provided to the people based on the demand for the jobs. Based on the demand. Right, and that's the reason under MGNREGA, the allocation, although was done in the budget, later on the allocations would get changed. But now, under the new proposal, the government is not going to do that. The government simply says that I will allocate in the budget and I will decide how much money will be given to which state and what kind of projects would be covered under the new scheme. In fact, they have targeted only 4 types of categories of projects under the proposal. So that will convert this into a demand-based scheme rather than, that will convert this into a supply-driven scheme rather than MGNREGA, which is a demand-driven scheme. Right, so these are important proposals which have been provided. Right, please go through this. Again, I'm saying this will continue to be discussed now. There will be multiple articles in the coming days regarding this. And final article, as usual, just an update regarding Russia and Ukraine. What is update? Ukraine now is resisting US push to cede Donbas region. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of the region, Donbas region. Right? Most of this particular region has been occupied, is under the control of Russia now. Right? After it attacked Ukraine, 90% of the Donbas region is under control of Russia now. It is fighting to gain the remaining control as well. One of the proposals which has been put forward as a part of the peace deal by USA is that the Ukraine should give up the control. The Ukraine should simply give up the control over the Donbas, give it to Russia altogether. Right? That is in fact one of the proposals. But the contention on the other side is Ukraine says it is not possible for us. Reason being, the president cannot decide to give away the land. There has to be, a referendum held. There has to be a voting that should be conducted. So that is the reason there is a discussion which is happening in the context of the Donbas region. Done? So this is just an update. And there is also one more update. Yesterday, in one of the newspaper articles that I mentioned as a part of update, I said the president of Ukraine has announced that he will not be seeking membership into NATO. Now, this newspaper article simply says that is not true. There is no discussion as of now, definitely giving up NATO membership. There is no final decision on that. It all depends on what kind of guarantees will be provided by USA as well as other European countries. That is essentially NATO. Right, so these are certain updates associated with Russia-Ukraine war. Right, so these are the important articles, concepts, points, questions I wanted to discuss with you people in today's session. If you have liked the discussion, hit the like button. If you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. And do not forget, I will see you all today sharp at 6 p.m. in the marathon session on the banking chapter. That's it. Take care. Have a great day.